The Volkswagen Jetta GLI gets a refresh for the 2025 model year. And in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior changes, the interior changes, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the kind of fuel economy you can expect, and then the pricing and how it compares to the competition these days. So as far as the Jetta GLI, well, this is the second refresh that it's actually gotten. This car is 6 years old now, dating back to 2019 for the first model year of these, but it's really nicely freshened up for 2025. So right up front there, it's a new look with some new headlights, and you have that new grille that now extends into those headlights and kind of gives them an angrier look. You also have a light bar now that attaches in the middle there and goes across, and you also will see that on non-red cars especially, you have a lower red lip on that new front bumper, which has been restyled as well. And that red lip is a little bit controversial. You know, it really stands out, of course, on the non-red cars, but even on this one being red, you can see it's not an exact match. It's a slightly different shade of red. Depends on, you know, your personality, whether that's going to bother you or not, but that's the only thing that's a little iffy. But otherwise, I think it looks really sharp up front. I actually really love the way they redid this. And this one also has this black package you can get for about $650, and that gives you these black 18-inch wheels, but all wheels are new here on Jetta GLIs for 2025, and they look really nice with the red brake calipers there hiding behind them. You'll also see they relocated the GLI badge. It used to be on the fender. It's now right behind the fender on the front door here. You also have black mirror caps and the black roof here, of course, for the black package. Then going out to the back, you will see you have some new taillights that also now connect in the middle, continuing with that theme. You also have a new trunk lid arrangement there and also a new rear bumper, which is a really nice look. And so overall, I think it's a really nicely freshened up look here for the Jetta GLI, and, you know, keeps it fresh while still retaining the old bones, which are great because that's going to keep it nice and affordable. Although the unfortunate thing is this one has gone up in price because they're now only offering it in a fully loaded Autobahn trim, unfortunately. So you have to have all the bells and whistles, and as a result, these cost between $34,000 and $35,000 for all of them. And I'm kind of missing, you know, that base model, but this is a trend we're seeing across the industry, unfortunately. And so one thing to keep in mind there as far as the pricing. The interior of the 2025 GLI is a mix of both new and old. So you'll see there's a new dashboard design here, which gives you this new like air vent design here on the passenger side and some nice stitching, but it still is a driver-centric kind of interior like we're used to in the GLIs. And, you know, a lot of the tech and stuff is old. So first thing, though, sitting down in these seats, I believe these seats are the same as before, and they're still really nice seats. You know, they're perforated, they're heated and ventilated here on this Autobahn, which again is the only way they come. So all this stuff is standard equipment, but that's just because they got rid of the base one. But they, you know, have a really good amount of bolstering to them, and I think some people say they're not as good as GTI seats. To me, they're just as comfortable and really nice, although you do have a higher sitting position than the GTI. And I did notice during my week here that it was hard for me to get a comfortable driving position with my body type because the way the seat goes, it doesn't go low enough in my opinion, and so I can't clear my knees under this steering column without having the steering wheel up unnaturally high for me. So it's kind of a compromise where my knees just get the short end of the stick here. I don't love the way that it's set up, honestly, and you can't really tilt the seat downward any to, you know, give yourself any more knee room there. But, you know, again, that will just come down to your body type. Definitely sit in one of these at the dealer and make sure that, you know, you can find a driving position that works for you. But moving on here to the steering wheel, one nice thing is the wheel is now heated in the GLI, which is great. Now, you still have the capacitive touch buttons here, which have been, you know, the target of many complaints here for several years now. Honestly, it's something that I've just kind of grown accustomed to. It's still not ideal, but you know, it's not a deal breaker by any means in my opinion. And unfortunately, even though like the 2025 GTI is going to be getting regular buttons again, they weren't able to incorporate that change here in this for some reason, unfortunately. But still a really great wheel. Has a great 9-3 grip, nice little 10-2 notches, a flat bottom, and a nice looking wheel as well. The gauge cluster is the same as before, so nothing new there. So it's the 10.3-inch digital display with the little parts on the left and the right there. And it's a, you know, really nice gauge cluster. Has a few different views, and, you know, shows you all your basic stuff, and you can customize the colors of those to match the ambient lighting that you have here in this as well. And they're totally fine. They're not the most exciting gauges or anything, but totally fine, get the job done well. You also, coming over the middle here, have the same 8-inch touchscreen that you had in the pre-refreshed GLIs. And depending on how you feel about Volkswagen's new infotainment system, this is either a good thing or a bad thing. The bad news is that it's, you know, just small. it's 8 inches, and these days, most others are going up to slightly larger screens. I know some people are kind of overwhelmed with the ballooning screen sizes, so this might be just right. Now, what I can say though is it's not the highest resolution. You can see even with the wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto that it does have. You'll see that, you just only have a few icons there. It's not quite as high res as some of the others that'll be able to jam more icons in there. But, if you're someone who complains about small icons or something, this is going to be great. And you still have volume and tune knobs, which is great, something you don't have on that new screen as well. And I also love that you have satellite radio, because that is something with the 2025 Civic Si, with its Google built-in system, it got rid of satellite radio. So it's really great that you still have that here in this. If you're someone who listens to that a lot, this could be, a nice perk here of this. Now, unfortunately, when you are listening to music, you have to deal with this Beats audio stereo, which is far worse than the Bose stereo in the Civic and in some of the other competitors. Even I think the Elantra N has a Bose stereo. This stereo is just, it's okay. Depending on the type of music you're listening to, I found myself being like, okay, it's not so bad for certain songs. And other songs, I'm like, oh, this sounds terrible. So, unfortunately, it's not great. I wish they would, do a different kind of stereo in these, but it is what it is. Again, try it out at the dealer, see what you think. Anyway, coming down here, another thing that I don't love is they changed over to these capacitive touch controls for your HVAC system here. And this is something I think they took out of the Arteon, which has now been discontinued. And, it just gets rid of the knobs. So you can't do it without looking, and you have to make sure you're hitting the right spot. And especially at night, it can be a little tricky. I mean, it is illuminated, but still just not as good as basic knobs. And I think a lot of companies are already figuring out they should put knobs back in, and they should have physical controls. And this is going the opposite direction, unfortunately. So I don't love that either. It's, again, not a deal breaker, I don't think, but, just one thing that I think is actually a downgrade. Now, another thing you'll see in this area are your 2 USB-C jacks. It's great they're updating those to the USB-C. And you do have a wireless charging pad here as standard, and, it's rubberized, so that's nice, but there's no brackets or anything else to hold it in place, and especially in a sporty car, where you might be doing some aggressive cornering, this probably won't be the most reliable wireless charging pad, but it's, nice to have nonetheless. And also, I think it's kind of funny, the amount of blank buttons you have here around the shifter just seems like a bad design. But anyway, look at what you have in the middle though, a manual transmission, which I'm pretty sure is the last manual transmission that Volkswagen offers, at least in America, maybe globally as well. But, I'm sure other markets might still have manuals, but as far as sporty stuff goes, this is it. With the GTI and the Golf R losing that for 2025, we have it here in this, and that's huge. And so, for all the manual lovers out there, because I think they said the manual take rate, at least for GLI here, was 40%. I'm sure it was pretty similar to the GTI, but GTI again had a global audience. Jetta is just for North America, so they're able to justify keeping it around here amazingly for us. And so that's huge. And if you're someone who misses, the GTI not having that anymore, GLI might not be a bad compromise. All the same kind of Volkswagen stuff here, just, losing the hatch and swapping it for a trunk, but you get that manual still. And I think GLI could actually really get a nice boost in sales as a result of, being the last one standing with this manual. And I'll talk more about that whenever we hit the road. But otherwise, you have, 2 cup holders, another little slot next to it, and then the center armrest, which is nice and softly padded. You open that up and you'll see, a fairly deep cubby there, and also another USB-C jack. And, really great to have all of that. Moving on to the back seat here in the GLI. Nothing has changed. It's the same dimensions as the pre-2025s. So nothing new there. And I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I still have a few inches of legroom to spare, which does put this towards the top of the pack as far as rear legroom. I think this is, pretty much neck and neck with the Civic. And as far as other sporty vehicles that this competes with, I think they're all going to be smaller other than that Civic Si. And so, a really nice sized back seat. You have a fold down center armrest there. There's no USB-C jacks or, air vents or anything back there, but not a huge deal, I don't think, for this segment. And they do have, pockets in those doors as well. One thing though, if you are someone who has a car seat, which is a very niche thing, so I won't talk about this very long, but I don't love how the headrests are integrated in the back seat there, and they're really tall. They're integrated in like the Civic Si as well, but it just means that whenever you're trying to use that top tether anchor there, unless you want to have it go around the headrest over the top and smush it down, you can't really install a car seat very well if you're using that top anchor. Now, what I had to do with our daughter is just put her in the middle seat here and install the car seat there, because you can see the middle, at least, headrest pops up there and is able to, install it with a rear anchor normally that way. So that's the way I had to do this. But if you want to put more than one car seat in, I actually think this car is just not very good for it unless you want to trash those headrests. Just not a great design there. I'm not sure, why they did that for a vehicle that I would assume some people do transport kids in. And for anyone sitting in the back seat there, they also have the enjoyment of this very oversized moonroof. I'd say it's about, 25 to 50% larger than the average moonroof, certainly larger than like what you get in like a Civic or something like that. And really nice to have those luxuries, really nice to have the leather as well, because that's something that, again, like Civic Si doesn't offer, and so there certainly feels a little more plush in here. And, having the extra creature comforts like those ventilated seats and stuff are all really nice. Heated steering wheel, things that, again, you can't get in that Civic, or even in an Integra for that matter. So anyway, moving on to the trunk space, though, here in the Jetta GLI. It's a really good amount of space. It's a really wide, really long space. I mean, if you're a fan of stacking stuff in the GTI, maybe, you'll miss that a little bit here. But I'd say, as far as the amount of stuff you can actually put in there, it should be, if not the same as GTI, it might even be a little bit more. Beneath the floor there, you also have a spare tire, which is really great to see. But I mean, a really usable space. Of course, you can fold down those rear seats as well if you need even more space. But a nice large size, compact sedan, and certainly better than stuff like a Mazda 3 or something like that. And so, I think this interior is, again, some changes that I don't love, but I think it still is a very, very nice place to be. But I do think I still actually just slightly prefer the pre-2025 interior. But let's start up and go for a drive. One thing that thankfully hasn't changed is this wonderfully small Volkswagen key. It's really nice, the heavy metal on the top of it, plastic buttons. It's actually a very nice key, and again, I just love how small it is. Of course, it's keyless access, keyless entry, push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the Jetta GLI. So the first thing you notice, the first thing to really say is that it's identical mechanically to the pre-refresh GLI. So if you are familiar with this generation GLI from a driving standpoint, nothing has changed. So I'll save you a bunch of time, and you can just skip ahead to the timestamp there for the pricing, which is of course new, and how it compares to the newer competitors here. But as far as anyone else who's unfamiliar with Jetta GLI driving, it's a really nice experience. So again, a little bit of a higher sitting position here, like I mentioned earlier. And as far as, the smoothness, I mean, we have the adaptive dampers here. The dynamic chassis control is what Volkswagen calls it. And it does a really good job of giving you a smooth ride. It is notably smoother than everything else this competes with, and that at least the things that have adaptive dampers on them, but even the ones that don't, obviously suffer from that. But smoother ride than Elantra N, smoother ride than WRX, even WRX TS with its new adaptive dampers. Smoother than everything. I mean, maybe Integra is about the same with its adaptive dampers, but that's really the only one that's, I'd say even close. Great visibility too, with, a really nice large windshield, nice thin A-pillar, and good view out of the sides, good view out of the back, and, nice and easy, to park this vehicle and all that. Other things you notice about the Jetta GLI, especially the manual here, is just how nice and easy it is to drive the manual transmission. I really do love it. The clutch is fairly light and very communicative, so it's easy to be smooth. It's easy to rev match your downshifts with pretty quick throttle response, even in the normal mode. And the shifter is also very well defined for all of the gates, so you're never going to be like missing shifts. It's very easy to figure out where all the gears are reliably. The only minor nitpick I can say is that I don't love how with Volkswagen to go into reverse you have to push down, and that means that if you ever put downward pressure on the shifter, it's always going to give you this like bouncing motion with the shifter whenever you're shifting. So you just have to get used to only doing lateral motions and not downward there. It's a very minor nitpick. I just, whenever you're getting into it, it's just kind of weird having a bobbing shifter. But other than that, I've been totally fine with it this week. And just, again, the joy of rowing your own gears, which is getting more and more rare, especially, with here in the Volkswagen lineup. It's one of those things where I'm not even going to complain anymore, because I'm just thankful we have the experience, even if it's not a perfect experience. And I certainly think still Civic Si is a better shifting experience. I also like the shifter in the WRX better. But, again, I don't even care because these things are endangered. So anyway, I put it up into the sport mode here, and let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Put a wheel spin. Really pulls nice and strong. I really love the way this thing pulls. So Jetta GLI continues with that good old 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. It does 228 horsepower still, 258 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 time, car and driver with their manual did a perfect launch where they had to like feather the clutch and everything. If you're doing an abusive launch at like $4,000 like they did, you'll get a 6-second 0 to 60. If you're worried about 0 to 60 times, you're better off going for the 7-speed dual clutch automatic. It's still available with no upcharge for that, by the way. So it's a free option to go for the DSG or the manual here. And so, you know, certainly that's gonna be the way to go if you want to have the fastest accelerations. But, you know, me just doing an acceleration like that, you know, being easy on the clutch, you know, you're probably going to be something a little bit slower than 6 seconds, but still totally fine. And it's still more punch than you get in a Civic Si, for example. You know, Integra, more punch than, you know, a lot of those. Now, it's not the fastest, and I'll talk about this later. You know, launcher end for the same money gives you a lot more horsepower, as does the WRX and, you know, a couple of others. But I mean, this motor is really an overachiever. This, you know, 2-liter Volkswagen turbo motors. These things, you know, lots of tuning support. Really a strong little motor that, again, is so diverse that they use it in, you know, punchier stuff like the Golf R with, you know, not a ton of adjustments. So a very, very good motor for sure. And here in the sport mode, you have some extra sounds that it does pipe in. You can go and have a custom mode and turn that off, and those sounds aren't on in the normal mode either. So you can, you know, custom tailor that to your liking. But also on this road that's a little bit rougher here, you know, you don't really hear much road noise at all. You know, for a vehicle in this segment, it's not bad. I'd say Mazda 3 is certainly still quieter, but I think there are some others that are a little louder than this too. So I don't think it's too bad. But anyway, coming some corners here that I always take. Let's see how the Jetta GLI handles. Again, nothing new here, but give it a little whirl. It's also a pretty cold day here, 26 degrees outside, so these all-season tires aren't going to be grouping in their optimal form, but yeah, that's what all you have here are these hand-cooked Kinergy GT all-season tires, and I have certainly found that they don't have a ton of grip here this week, and the electronic limited slip differential really has to work overtime to claw for grip. It does a good job doing that, but it really, you know, needs to work hard. They're 225 wide tires, by the way, as well, but I think even just upgrading to a grippier all-season, because there are some really good all-seasons out there that, you know, do give you really good grip. It's just, unfortunately, I don't think these hand cooks are the best in their segment. But you know, I mean, the rest of the vehicle, you know, it does feel a little heavier than the Civic Si, for example. These weigh a little over 3,500 pounds, so a little more than Civic, you know, by actually a decent margin, honestly. But you know, so you're going to feel that. And again, the higher seating position here, it does feel less sporty than Civic Si and Integra will feel. And honestly, I think you even sit a little higher than like Mazda 3 Turbo, honestly. But you know, it handles everything really, really well, and it's still so fun, again, especially with that limited slip diff in the front. You know, clawing your way through corners and, you know, playing with that diff is really fun, especially like in the rain or in snowy, you know, kind of conditions. And it's really great to have that to give you that better, you know, traction as well whenever you're just trying to get home. And to slow everything down, you have 13.4-inch brakes from the Mark 7 Golf R, and certainly nice beefy brakes, give you lots of confidence. And I also really love, you know, throttle response, brake response. You have brakes grab right towards the top of the pedal there, not overly grippy, but, you know, just enough to give you some nice confidence there. And then powering out of a corner here, it does a really good job. It is really fun, and, you know, especially with the adaptive dampers, you know, being in their sport mode, you know, very little lean. And although I'd say in sport mode, though, it's not like rock solid either. So, you know, that's something like, for example, with a launcher and you put it in its sportiest mode, and I mean, it is like race car stiff almost. You know, this, even in the sportiest mode, it's not bad really, and still something you can totally daily drive, even if you want to have the most sporty experience possible. But yeah, see, it's so easy to rev match. It's so easy to to push this little thing, and it's so much fun. It really is. And I'm just so sad that Volkswagen's given up on the manual. It sounds good too, I think, and even with some of that sound assistance. But you know, this is a really fun thing to, you know, carve up a back road in, and I think, you know, I mean, obviously having more grip is better, but I have had a little bit of fun playing around with the understeer that I can provoke a little bit, and just, you know, playing around with this thing, being so punchy. It certainly is, you know, powering out of corners and stuff is more fun in this than it is in a Civic Si with that. You know, I mean, you have to really drive that car harder, and if you're someone who likes burying your foot into the floor more, you know, you can do that a little bit more in the Civic Si. But you know, this having that extra punch, especially the torque is what you're going to feel. 258 pound-feet of torque versus what I think like 190 pound-feet of torque in Civic Si. I mean, it is way down on torque compared to this, and so, you know, it's just it's a really fun little car, yeah, I still love the way they have these things set up. They're just an absolute blast. But then whenever you're back in normal mode, just, you know, stuck behind traffic and just cruising around normally, you know, it still is just so fun. Again, just the engagement of the manual transmission, the smoothness of the ride, you know, it's just, it all makes for a really nice daily driver. I've really loved just, you know, running errands in this thing and just, you know, living with the vehicle. It's just a really nice little thing to live with. And to someone, especially these days, I appreciate a few more luxuries. You know, certainly is nice, especially on these cold days, having a heated steering wheel, something, you know, you wouldn't have in an SI or in an Integra. And, you know, it certainly is just a more mature, grown-up kind of sport compact, I think. I love sport compacts, and I will happily deal with, you know, having less creature comforts, but, you know, having all these nice features, especially, again, people living in hot climates, you know, for example, having, you know, cooled seats is going to be, you know, a really nice thing as well in the summer. And so, yeah, overall, just really love the way the Jetta GLI is set up, and just the vibe that you get from it, just, you know, having it be a little bit more of a comfy sport compact. And now we're out on the highway here in the Jetta GLI, and I have the adaptive cruise control system on, which does come standard here for 2025, as well as the lane keeping assist system, and all the safety tech is standard. There are no safety tech options on these, and again, now they're all fully loaded anyway, being Autobahns. That's beside the point, but you know, you get everything. So blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, automatic emergency braking, all that stuff is here. And the steering assist too, it's like the travel IQ, I think is what they now call their lane keep assist combined with adaptive cruise. It still is a hands-on system, of course, but it does do some nice, you know, adjustments to your lane here. So we'll see if I let it kind of drift into the shoulder there, it kind of gives you a little bit of a nudge, and, you know, lets you go back into the middle of the lane there. And so it's a really nice thing if you're on long highway drives. Having it kind of make some of those micro corrections for you is certainly going to be a nice thing to have. And so out here on the highway, even on the noisier bits, yeah, it's not too bad. If you have a conversation going, you know, I mean, I'm raising my voice a little bit, but if you have the radio going or something like that, you know, it's going to be totally fine. And just a really nice little thing to cruise in. But again, if you want the quietest experience, I think Mazda 3 is going to be the way to go for that. And for anyone that's curious, out here on the highway too, in 6th gear at 61 miles per hour currently, it's turning just under 2,000 RPM, so it's also not too booming. Obviously, that'll climb a little bit as you get to the higher speeds there, but, you know, 6th gear, because of the turbo, it gives you a good amount of punch, you know, for passing. Very easy to pass without having to downshift or feel like you're bogging the engine down. You know, and so I think it's actually really well set up as far as the gearing goes, and just gearing in general for this vehicle is really fun. It's maybe not quite as short as like WRX gearing that has some pretty short gearing, so you're really stirring the pot a lot in that. This is less so, but you know, I think they really did a good job setting up the gearing in these. One other little thing I really enjoyed living with this vehicle this week is that the safety tech isn't too annoying. So even though I've actually left the lane keep assist system on all week, or lane departure, you know, prevention or whatever, and there was like 1 or 2 times where it kind of nudged me slightly prematurely, but otherwise it's been totally fine and hasn't annoyed me, and that is a huge improvement. So a lot of these systems over the past 5 years have really been overbearing with really, you know, being a nanny, constantly judging your driving, and really this is just like a nice safety net, you know, to catch you if, you know, you do happen to have a lapse in judgment, but it's not, you know, something that's going to be constantly, you know, bugging you, which is really great. Fuel economy for the Jetta GLI is rated at 26 mpg in the city, 36 on the highway, and 30 combined. And in my driving here, which I'd say was, you know, still majority suburban around town, you know, 35 mile per hour roads, I did do a little more highway driving than usual, but anyway, my fuel economy has been 26.6 mpg, and that includes a little bit of idling here to film this interior, so rounded up to 27, and I'm doing 1 mpg better than the city rating, which is notable because typically I get 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating in my driving like this, and so this is slightly overperforming. And I've heard that this motor is actually very efficient and, you know, kind of an overperformer, and, you know, with the manual here, you know, maybe a little bit less so, but especially if you go for that dual clutch, I've seen some really high, you know, mpg numbers on the highway for the dual clutch versions of this, and, you know, GTI, even Golf R. You know, they're very efficient if you're taking it easy, which is great. The only other thing I'll say though about the DSG is that my last experience in a DSG Volkswagen was the Golf R about 1.5 years half ago or so, and that was really set up to hypermile big time and wasn't sporty unless you were in sport mode or manually shifting yourself. I'm not sure if Jetta GLI also has that same kind of tuning for the DSG these days, but I would certainly test drive a DSG if you're considering that. Make sure that it's not trying to hypermile and, you know, completely just be unresponsive, which is how it felt for me in the Golf R. If it's well programmed, great. Otherwise, I think this manual is certainly the more fun way to go with that. The last thing to mention here is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as pricing goes, this one as tested is $35,045. And like I said earlier, there's really no options. The only option this has is that black package for $650, and I believe there's a slight upcharge for this color. So if you're going for a black package, non-premium color, you might be able to keep it, right at 34, maybe even slightly under. But that's really, the cheapest you can get one of these things for. Now, if you are someone who wants a good deal on a Jetta GLI, you're definitely going to want to check out mattmoranmotoring.com and go to the new car quotes page. And there you'll be able to get access to dealer invoice pricing, as well as getting connected with a dealer and seeing, the kind of prices they can offer you, and just check one of these out in person for yourself. So if you're interested in that, definitely check out the link in the description. There also will be a link in a pinned comment here in this video. But anyway, so as far as how that pricing compares to the competition, it depends on how you look at it and what you want, really. Because, I think in some ways, again, this is more expensive, for example, than Civic Si. And I think Civic Si, still has a better shifting experience, still feels a little bit better for the driving position, a little bit lighter with the handling. There are some advantages there. And Si, even though that has ballooned in price, that is still $31,000. That is a $4,000 savings here. Now, again, you don't get leather, you don't get cooled seats, although you now at least have heated seats for 2025. That also has a Bose stereo, slightly bigger screen. Again, you lose satellite radio, so there's some give and take there. And as much as I love this, I really also still love the driving experience of Si. So that's kind of a toss-up for me. I think that, the one other component to think about if you are someone who cares about safety, the only other thing I'll say, getting back to the safety component of this vehicle, is that the safety tech is all very good, but the crash performance isn't the best. And every single competitor this competes with is either a top safety pick or a top safety pick plus award winner. This is not. And this performed not great in the newest tests. Now, we haven't seen any new crash testing for 2025. I don't think Volkswagen has said that they made any improvements to the structure for 25 to do better in crash tests. Maybe they did, though. I guess we'll have to wait and see, once testing does happen, if there are any improvements. But as of, time of me filming this here at the end of 2024, there's just a disadvantage there as far as safety in this. And again, Civic being a top safety pick plus, that's going to, make that a little bit more appealing, I think, if you are someone who's worried about that. Getting back to the other competitors, though, the other one, though, that, makes this a little bit of a tough proposition is the Hyundai Elantra N. The Elantra N is the exact same $35,000. Still gives you, again, Bose stereo, heated seats. It isn't some total race car or anything. It's, less plush, and you just have Alcantara instead of the leather and stuff. But Elantra, and if you are actually an enthusiast and you want the sportiest thing possible for $35,000, you got to get an Elantra N. It's way more power, 276 horsepower. You have an active exhaust with a bunch of different modes that's loud and crackly and poppy. You have auto rev matching on your manual transmission. It has the adaptive dampers still, and double 12.3-inch screens, way better technology. It's just better in all the ways. I spent some time with one of those here in the summer of 2024. Absolutely love the Elantra N still, and so it just comes down to your personality. Again, this is, I think, kind of playing for a more mature, kind of slightly more relaxed vibe. Elantra N is still very bold with the styling, very bold with the interior. It might be a little tough for some people to live with on a daily basis, but if it's not, and you just want the sportiest thing, I think you're better off going for that, hands down, all day, every day. Also, if you're interested in something, with a little bit more punch and all-wheel drive, and you don't mind not having a manual, there is, of course, the Mazda 3 Turbo still. Now, that's not quite as sporty. You get some skinnier tires on that, and it's not really supposed to be a sporty thing, but it's more luxurious, just like this. It gives you all-wheel drive, 320 pound-feet of torque, 250 horsepower, horsepower if you put premium in it, and that is, you know, a really fun one that I actually really enjoyed as well. And so another one that's certainly worth considering if, you know, you do want something a little more mature, a little more understated, and you know, are okay with having an automatic. And that's a regular 6-speed auto as well, and it's programmed very well, so it's going to be, you know, something that's not going to be annoying you. You know, it's actually a really well done and really well set up vehicle. The only downside of it, though, is that you just have a little bit less space. It's, you know, kind of tight on the inside, not a large amount of hatch or trunk space. And so, you know, that's the only compromise. But if you don't care about that, definitely check out the Mazda 3 Turbo as well. And then, you know, whenever you look at the other stuff, though, that's out there these days, especially with new 2025 pricing, you know, you have stuff, for example, WRX now. They got rid of the base trim in that. And even the premium trim, though, is $37,000 with cloth seats. This, you know, is certainly a much nicer experience for $2,000 less. Again, you get more power in the WRX, you get the all-wheel drive in the WRX, but honestly, this feels fairly similar in power because this actually has basically the same amount of torque as a WRX. Obviously, it's going through the front wheel, so you have that front-wheel drive drama. And if you're someone who needs all-wheel drive because of where you live or whatever, obviously WRX and GR Corolla are really, you know, going to be your top two picks there. But you know, if you don't need all-wheel drive, I would just say skip the WRX because it's just gotten too expensive these days, and the value has kind of gotten crappier in those. Same goes kind of for GTI. You know, GTI is getting more expensive. We don't even have new 2025 pricing yet. But even for 2024's very comparable trim that gives you the leather seats, the Autobahn, now that gives you a few other extra things. I think there's a head-up display and, you know, bigger screen and a few other things in the GTI. But an Autobahn GTI is also $40,000. So if you are a Volkswagen fan, and especially a Volkswagen fan that wants a manual, kind of a no-brainer. You might have always preferred GTI over GLI, but it might be time to reconsider the GLI because, again, $5,000 less than a comparable GTI. You get the manual option. You know, you have some of that old Volkswagen stuff, which I think a lot of people would actually be happy with, having the old infotainment system versus the new. And, you know, I think this is kind of a sweet spot. You know, if you are a Volkswagen fan that doesn't love, you know, some of the new things they've introduced in the past, you know, year or two here. And so, you know, if in that context, if you're talking about WRX, you're talking about, you know, GTI, this is a fantastic value. You know, it just comes down to how you look at it and what your priorities are, like anything. And so, you know, in a vacuum, I like the GLI a lot. I think, you know, if it had top marks for safety, me being, you know, the oddball enthusiast that actually cares about safety, if you are, you know, interested in that, I mean, that's just the one nagging thing about this that I don't love, is the fact that it just doesn't have as good of safety. And so for that reason, I'd probably go Civic Si still personally in this segment. I think wholeheartedly, especially if you're not, again, obsessed with safety like I am, definitely, you know, go for one of these. Get it with a manual, support that manual cause, send the message to Volkswagen that people still want manuals in these things, and, you know, maybe someday they'll reconsider for the GTI and the Golf R as well. But yeah, overall, just I'm still so grateful this car still exists as well. Sport compacts, you know, is another endangered kind of segment, I think, in many ways. And so happy we still have a fun, relatively affordable car. I still wish they'd bring back the base model, but, you know, I'll take what I can get. Still happy we have a fun little, you know, scrappy front-wheel drive vehicle that gives you some of those extra comforts that, you know, I think a lot of us these days, you know, would really like to have. So anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the 2025 Jetta GLI. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Volkswagen for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.